The Out of Bounds Show podcast is brought to you by Boar's Head, premium meats, cheeses, and hummus. Boar's Head, compromise elsewhere.
WRKS Pickens Jackson.
All systems go.
Live from the Whiskey 61 Lounge inside the BankPlus Studio.
This is now awarded.
Live in the studio. It's the Out of Bounds Show with Blowout. Streaming live worldwide on the Out of Bounds radio app. And on your radio at ESPN 105.9.
All set? Let's go.
The Zone.
Woo! It's different week to week, isn't it? It's been that way for years. Good morning. Welcome in. Hope you had a better weekend than Urban Meyer. We are live in the BankPlus Studio. Out of Bounds, 105.9 The Zone, ESPN. We're streaming live for you on the Out of Bounds radio app. You can also hit us up on thezone1059.com. Woo! Good weekend. Saturday and Sunday, very, very entertaining. We have all sorts of stuff to recap on this Max Effort Monday, brought to you by the Golden Moon Casino Sportsbook and award-winning Dancing Rabbit Golf Club. You can hit us up on the Farm Bureau Insurance call-in line, 601-707-3750. Would love to hear from you. Twitter handle at BowBounds. That's already activated this morning. And then the infamous text line, 601-885-3776. Brought to you by your next John Deere tractor to manage your land through Mississippi Ag. And, of course, agup.com. Two locations, Canton and Pearl. We're already receiving text messages on the agup.com text line, and we're going to jump right into it. It was the best lineup of games that we had by far year to date in the world of college football. And so you were excited. We were excited. You know, right out of the gate after game day, Arkansas and Georgia, you know, that let us down. That was not a game, never was a game. And, you know, it went the wrong way on the Razorbacks who play Ole Miss this weekend. And then Ole Miss and Bama was not competitive. Now, by then there were some other games that were competitive that you were kind of keeping an eye on or flipping back and forth on and so on. And then we go into the evening, and Blake's Mississippi State Bulldogs pull a massive upset on the road against the Texas A&M Aggies, where the youngest team in the league went on the road, grew up, kind of a big, huge grow-up game, become a man game on the road. And I think if you were listening to some of the people in the media, that's the loudest stadium in the Southeastern Conference. You can make a strong argument there's a 1A, but College Station, what they've done, they did a great job, and that is a loud stadium. But Will Rodgers, young QB, offensive line, go on the road and upset Texas A&M. So this is what you're getting for Jimbo Fisher at $9 to $10 million a year. He's going to start off 0-3 in the Southeastern Conference because they'll lose this weekend in Alabama. How about that? I mean, year 4, he's going to go 0-3 in conference against Alabama this weekend, and they'll host the Alabama Crimson Tide. And it was interesting, you know, Arkansas and Ole Miss just. It never took off. Georgia and Alabama absolutely dominated. And Georgia's got the best defense in the country. I mean, we feel like that.
Looked that way Saturday.
And then Bama is an interesting team. They're a good team for Bama, not close to special. They were not ripping off 30 and 40 and 50-yard plays on offense. Ole Miss, great opening drive. Blake, if they punch it in, maybe it becomes a competitive game. don't get it on fourth down. From there, Alabama took advantage and really did what they wanted. And the deal there was Ole Miss couldn't stop Bama on fourth down. Mm-mm. It really became these coaches this day and age are understanding, hey, I'm playing with 4 downs. When I was growing up, they only played with 3. And Ole Miss couldn't convert fourth downs. Bama could. Ole Miss couldn't run the football. Guess who could? Bama. And it's amazing as high-flying as Ole Miss has been at times the last year and a half that their running game drives their offense, and they could not run the football. And even Alabama's not what we've seen with Derrick Henry and Najee Harris and Ingram and Trent Richard, all these guys that have gone through there. They're not ripping off huge runs. I mean, they had to work for it. This is not an explosive offense. They had to work their way down the field, and Ole Miss at times looked like they could stop them, and they couldn't.
Yeah.
So Bama ran it, kept Ole Miss on the side. Did you notice with 2 minutes and 40 seconds on the clock, each team had the ball once?
Isn't that incredible?
In the first quarter.
That doesn't make that is so rare in college football, regardless of who you're playing.
But those two teams, so I mean, Ole Miss milked it, but then Bama flipped it once they stopped them.
Yep.
And milked the clock on that first drive.
Yeah, and I was actually impressed with Ole Miss's front line. Like Sam Williams and company actually played well at times, but you could tell they just got beat up and gassed. And by the third and fourth quarter, it was over.
Yeah, the Ole Miss defense did make it.
They did their best because that offense could not move the football.
They really challenged Bama at times. I know that's hard to believe if you look at the score, or if you just remember, you were kind of watching the game. You don't think, but they did. They made some. They didn't get a turn. They didn't get some big turnover or anything.
No, but they had a couple negative plays.
But they blew up some things. Mississippi State, on the other hand, Blake, going into a bye week and knowing that you're playing Bama in 2 weeks, and after what had happened against Memphis and LSU, to go into A&M, they're an elite recruiter. Mike Leach has now beat 2 elite recruiters on the road in a year and a half. Lane Kiffin hasn't. But if you take the temp out on the street, Ole Miss is this, and this. And Lane is, the best thing since X, Y, and Z. And then if you take it out on the street, Mike Leach, it's, this isn't going to work. And he's not going to get it done. And we need to go back to a power spread and who we are and so on. Mike Leach has beat 2 elite recruiters
in their own backyard,
on the road. And you could tell Cole Kubelik, Jordan Rodgers calling the game, Tom Hart, how loud that place was, especially in the second half. And Will Rodgers made play after play. And, of course, that defense, not a bad deal to get a safety to wrap up the game. And I thought Arnett dialed up some good stuff to make Calzada uncomfortable.
Yeah, including the, obviously, game-sealing safety. Yeah. They were able to get into the backfield, which is something that the Mississippi State defense had struggled to be consistent with through the first 4 weeks. Mike
Leach has beat 2 elite recruiters on the road.
Yeah, A&M's talent composite ranking, according to 247, is number 8 in the country for this season. That's pretty good. Pretty solid.
They're an elite recruiter.
Yep.
They leapfrogged Auburn. They recruit right behind LSU. And, of course, Bama's number 1 in the West and number 1 overall.
Yeah, so you've beaten the number 2 and the number 3 recruiter in your division now.
With the youngest team in the Southeastern Conference last year and this year.
The quarterback who can't run the offense.
Maybe some people want to give – they're still going to be exposed at times because of their youth and inexperience. But if you can't see that some things are trending the right way – well, I guess, and again, once guys make up their mind, especially in sports, it's going to be hard to change that. We're live in the BankPlus Studio. The Out of Bounds Show is brought to you by the Golden Moon Casino Sportsbook, an award-winning Dancing Rabbit Golf Club. We're streaming live on the Out of Bounds radio app. Blake, did you have a better weekend than Urban Meyer? Cool. We're going to do the big board and then the SEC Insider Hit. And then Tom Luganville at 8:30 and Steve Robertson at 9:15. Good morning. Welcome in on a Max Effort Monday.
Swoochy Boochie, good morning to you.
The Out of Bounds Show podcast is powered by Breezy Oaks Ranch. For Mississippi-raised premium Wagyu beef and heritage pork shipped straight to your door, visit breezyoaksranch.com.
Board. What's on the big board?
All right. Good morning. Welcome in on a Max Effort Monday, brought to you by Mississippi Sports Medicine and Orthopedic Center. Hit up MississippiSportsMedicine.com for any orthopedic hiccup. State of the art, built for the patient, new surgery center and clinic, Lakeland Drive, Flowood. It is without a doubt one of the nicest orthopedic clinics in the country, Mississippi Sports Medicine and Orthopedic Center. I've got Blake Mania with me. I'm your host, Bo Bounds. It's almost always week to week, isn't it? You feel good one week, or you feel terrible one week. Hey, Mississippi State fans, enjoy it. Love it. Get that cup of coffee, whatever it is that you're sipping on, that Dr. Pepper, and that scrambled egg sandwich. It's going to be even better. That honey butter chicken biscuit from Burgers, Blues, and Barbecue. It's already good. It's even better after you win. And when the youngest team in the league goes on the road against an elite recruiter with an A coordinator on defense, not on offense, with an A defensive coordinator, you're thinking, well, what did I say? Blake, we mentioned last week, we said, first 1 to 20 wins.
Yep.
I did not see Mississippi State scoring 26 points. Tip of the cap. And it may not have been pretty, but who cares? It was at times, actually. I mean, Rodgers was hooking up with Mekhi Polk and others, and he had a phenomenal night. And obviously, his offensive line, Blake, was, I mean, considering what they were going against and how A&M is recruited in their front seven,
I'd say they played.
That offensive line played. We've talked about how well they played against LSU. In that environment, as loud as Kyle Field is, and this is still new to so many of these guys, or all of them, whatever, I just thought they showed the mettle, that you had to have. And Blake, didn't you feel like on some third downs, they did what they needed to do, and Will continued to survey the field and, hit a big play, get a big pop, and find the right guy in a little bit of space and kept moving those chains.
Yep.
And it got more and more deflating for A&M. I think they thought eventually they would turn the game, and Mississippi State may start to, throw up all over themselves with the mental miscues.
Absolutely.
Other than that one drive at the end of the game where they got backed up 6 yards or whatever it was, you got to give them credit on both offense and defense as far as doing what they were supposed to do.
Oh, 100%. I think you're going to give up pressure against an SEC defense 9 out of 10 games, right? Like someone's going to get pressure at some point in the game. So you give up a little bit of that, but I thought they played exceptionally well on the front line, and like you said, it allowed Will, something Cole Kubelik talked about. Will looked like he had a lot more patience today than he has in recent games. And I think that's a trust factor of he played against LSU and didn't get lit up 60 minutes. Now they've played against A&M. He's not getting lit up for 60 minutes.
Yeah.
That gives as a quarterback, I mean, we heard the old joke about Sam Darnold when he was in New York where he said, I'm seeing ghosts. Yeah. I'm seeing ghosts. Well, I mean, you don't think a 19-year-old QB who's played 9 games or 10 games sees ghosts when his O-line's not good? That's changing. And so you're seeing the results on the field. You talked about Mississippi State's mental miscues. In that environment, just 7 penalties for 65 yards for Mississippi State. That's pretty good.
That's pretty good.
For a
Obviously,
team that struggled.
Was it 3 or 4 of those on that late drive?
Exactly.
Yeah. So really, they all happened almost on one drive, or half of them did.
Yeah.
So that's a good point. So MSU with a huge win, Blake. Auburn with a huge win on the road against LSU.
Is that a coffin ceiling win?
Jordy Collada out of Baton Rouge thinks it is. I know you saw that tweet.
Oh, yeah.
I'm still not like totally sold on Bo Nix, but he made 2 Sports Center worthy plays that would just blow your mind as you were watching. I know you were. I was.
Manziel-esque. It was. They were really Manziel-esque. The way he circled the wagons in the back of the backfield, just spinning in circles and avoiding guys.
Maybe the TJ Finley thing was a wake-up call for him, kind of like Tony Pollard was a wake-up call for Zeke Elliott.
Oh.
And everybody and anybody needs to be pushed. And so maybe there was a little bit of that.
I was in the TJ Finley boat. Don't get it twisted. I did not think Auburn could win this game without TJ Finley being the starter. So, props to Bo Nix.
Well, that's his best game as a college player.
Without fail.
To go on the road and do that.
That's the other 1A hostile environment.
So MSU with the big win, Auburn with the big win, and people are already letting us know that Dan Mullen lost. Kentucky beat Florida for the first time since 1986 in Lexington, Kentucky. Ronald Reagan was your president in his second term. Blake was not here.
I was not.
And I was a teenager. So that's a long time ago for Florida to lose in Lexington. So people are having fun with that. When you look, Blake, at Georgia dominating Arkansas and Bama dominating Ole Miss, I thought Florida was in that space. You know that from last week.
Yeah.
I thought Ole Miss was in that space. I had those 4 teams as the teams to watch, and then everybody else, right?
Even Brad Edwards mentioned that. Could we make this argument that they're the best 4 teams in the country, potentially?
Right. So I had Bama, I had Georgia, I had Ole Miss, and I had Florida last week. Do I still believe that Ole Miss and Florida are/can be good football teams? Absolutely. Did I think it was a kind of a Herculean task to ask Ole Miss to go on the road? I picked Ole Miss. I picked Bama to win. You know that on this show. But as 14.5-point dogs, I'm not sure that I've ever seen that much confidence in a fan base as a 14, starting off as a 17.5, but as a 14.5-point dog. Neither game was a game.
Nope.
Georgia and Bama acted like elite recruiters. A&M and LSU are not acting like elite recruiters.
100%.
Okay? So if you want to take those 4 monsters that we talk about a lot, that take up a lot of space on the show, Bama, Georgia, LSU, and A&M, all elite recruiters, but 2 of them are acting. And Georgia's doing it with Stetson Bennett the 4th.
That's incredible. He threw the ball 11 times, and they were never in doubt of absolutely beating the snot out of Arkansas.
Arkansas.
Well, it goes back to what we talked about. When your team is elite at running the football and scheming up some QB run stuff, you're going to beat 9 out of 10 teams that you're as talented as or more talented than.
What did I call them last week?
No, I think it's verbatim.
Mississippi State light when Dan had those 3 really good teams.
It's verbatim because you see the limit when you can't stretch the field vertically. Your ability to beat elite defenses is 0.
And let's talk about who stretched the field this weekend.
Mississippi
Will
State.
Rodgers,
Yeah.
Mike Leach in the air raid.
Yep.
Against the number 4 passing defense in the country.
Yeah.
Blake.
Mekhi Polk had himself a monster game. 13 catches, 2 touchdowns. He stretched the field vertically. Malik Heath was an inch and a half away from catching an amazing touchdown catch.
He almost had a really big night.
Oh, he had 2 catches that were so close down in the end zone that he didn't complete. But yeah.
I had no idea who Christian Ford was until 2 weeks ago. He's a walk-on. He's playing some. But Tulu, I thought Tulu and Austin Williams made a couple of catches that were very important in the grand scheme of things for Will.
Tulu's running real routes now. Imagine that.
He's still
get him
young
on the field
and trying to figure things out and so on. There's so many sophomores here, true sophomores that we're looking at that are playing. But yeah, hey, and we got to give props to Zach Arnett. What he was able to dial up with, again, I think a defense that is salty, but far, far, far from special.
Overperforming through 5 weeks.
Well, you could argue that, no question. I mean, they're playing some guys that, should be probably playing at La Monroe, but they're figuring it out, and you got to give them a lot of props on the defensive side of the football. Mississippi State 26, A&M 22. We're live in the BankPlus Studio. The show, the Max Effort Monday, is brought to you by Mississippi Sports Medicine and Orthopedic Center, and that's MississippiSportsMedicine.com. Luganville at 8:30. The Out of Bounds Show podcast is presented by Edwin Watts Golf Shop on County Line Road. Your golf game starts with Edwin Watts Golf Shop.
This is the SEC Insider Hit. Presented by your local Farm Bureau Insurance agent. Go local. Go with a home team.
All right, good morning. Welcome in. Max Effort Monday, brought to you by Blake Mania. Good morning. Welcome in. Live in the BankPlus Studio. Mississippi State with a monster win on the road against, the Texas A&M Aggies that are paying a coach $9 to $10 million a year to start off 0-3 in the Southeastern Conference in year 4. I mean, this isn't year 2 for Jimbo Fisher. And he didn't walk into a rebuild. Remember, A&M was a top 12-15 recruiter, and then he moved them into the top 8 as an elite, as what we refer to as an elite recruiter. So the Aggies will welcome the Alabama Crimson Tide this weekend, and it's probably not going to work out for them. With Bama coming in. And again, I don't think that this is anywhere close to a special, dominant Bama team. Now, hey, 6-7 weeks from now, who knows? Because some of these teams have the ability to grow up and be totally different. You're hoping your team is. It's not going to be at that level, but, you hope that your team continues to mature and grow up and get better and all that stuff. Some of these high school football teams are doing that. Some of them aren't. Same thing in the NFL. Blake and I were talking about, we couldn't believe what happened yesterday in the NFL. I mean, I didn't have Joe Judge and the New York Giants going down to the Superdome and beating Sean Payton, Hall of Fame coach. And again, I know they're still trying to figure it out on offense, but close game. Yeah, we all read the numbers of what Joe Judge and the Giants have been ATS, but so it made sense to take the 7.5, and my good friend on our guys trip this weekend did and won, but didn't think that the Giants would win outright. So when you look at what all we try to size it up and get all the answers week to week. Arkansas and Ole Miss were the toast of the town. Neither one of them were in the game. I mean, they got absolutely blown out. Their doors blown off. So there's this game, as Kiffin said, I don't know, a week or two ago or whenever, this game will humble you. And it's going to continue to do so, whether you're Tom Brady or it's your favorite SEC team. I can tell you this, Aggies, LSU, and Florida this morning, especially the way they're wired and recruit and who they think that, I don't know why A&M thinks this, but LSU and Florida actually have a, championship pedigree. But A&M has built a nice, shiny stadium that you could argue is maybe the best in the country. With that Manziel expansion, and they recruit gangbusters, and they have billions and billions and billions of dollars, and yet they're a 7-5, 8-4 program at the end of the day. And they're an elite recruiter. And Mike Leach outcoached Jimbo Fisher. Mike Leach and Zach Arnett, did what they needed to do on the road with the youngest team in the Southeastern Conference. And Blake, Will Rodgers has had some really good moments as a young player, but when you go 46 of 59 on the road for 408 and no picks, and Blake, he didn't have a fumble in the pocket.
That's right.
Okay. So when you drop back that much, you're usually, if you talk to the Mississippi State offensive staff, they kind of will tell you that, there is a really, really good high percentage that you're going to make a turnover, right? That you're going to have a turnover. Mm-hmm. and they didn't have that. And Mekhi Polk and Will Rodgers were unbelievable. But I think that you got to go to the Mississippi State offensive line, who last year couldn't block me or you.
Nope.
And this year, there's been a few moments where you question what in the world is going on. But, man, they have given Will a lot of time, and this young quarterback is starting to see some things down the field and get more comfortable taking that just half second longer and hitting some guys down the field. And Saturday night, he had some great throws, and he had two of them that were right there, caught out of bounds, or Malik should have caught one on the sideline.
Yep.
And then the other one that was out of bounds. So he could have had an even bigger night. But as you said during the break, they went 4 for 4 in the red zone with 3 touchdowns and a field goal.
They hadn't done that since Leach showed up.
Yeah.
That's the first time they've been 100% successful in their red zone efficiency.
And this thing is all about offensive scoring efficiency and defensive scoring efficiency.
Yep.
It is at the high school level, the college, and the NFL level. And if you're not crunching those numbers, you're way, way behind.
Well, and look at how I think it's an eye-opening thing for Mississippi State, because this is that whole coaches like to say, well, we're getting better. The results just don't show that yet, right?
Yeah.
So you lose to Memphis, and you're like, well, that's an embarrassing performance.
It is.
And you look better against LSU, but you lose, so it still doesn't feel
against
good.
an LSU team that doesn't have an identity.
For
so
sure.
You're frustrated that you gave away a game. All these games, I think it was Brian on our text line last week, said every game is so precious in the league.
You only get 12.
It's so coveted.
Yeah.
And you can't waste opportunities like that. So you really wondered whether they would win again until at Vandy.
Yeah.
And they go to A&M, and in what Charlie said on the text line, that was a grow up, become a grown man game. I still think that their inexperience will be exposed at times, but they're trending in the right direction. Will Rodgers played great. The O-line played great. And Zach Arnett did some really, really cool things throughout the game to keep Calzada just off schedule and uncomfortable.
Well, and they only threw the ball 20 times. When you break it down, like you said, A&M may have shot themselves a bit in the foot because Mississippi State's passing offense, the way Leach has designed it, bleeds clock already. Then A&M went to a run-heavy system because they don't trust Calzada to make decisions. So that game shortened up on A&M, I think. The longer it goes, if you're the elite recruiter, the better chance you have to win. Talent outweighs you over the course of time.
Yeah.
And so to shorten the game themselves like that.
Everybody watching thought once Mississippi State shot themselves in the foot on that drive.
But then
also when they had to punt to give A&M the opportunity, right, one last time.
Mm-hmm.
And then they come away with the sack, and it's a huge win. Again, for our listeners, Leach has beat 2 elite recruiters on the road, LSU and A&M. The SEC Insider Hit this morning is brought to you by our friends at Farm Bureau Insurance. Bundle your auto and home and save with your local Farm Bureau Insurance agent. Bundle your auto and home insurance and save with Farm Bureau Insurance. That caller line is 601-707-3750. 601-707-3750. We'll switch gears. Just because Matt Corral didn't have a really good game and Ole Miss was blown out doesn't mean that Matt Corral's not a good quarterback this morning. He's still, just like a minute before the game started, Blake, he's still a really good quarterback. Now, they had a couple opportunities to do what they needed to do, and they couldn't convert on fourth down. And we know the opening drive looked really good, and then you get down there in the red zone and you can't convert. You turn it over to Bama, and then Ole Miss had milked the clock, but Bama totally milks the clock on their first offensive possession. You look up, and Ole Miss doesn't get their second possession until what? Under 2.5 minutes to go in the first quarter?
That's crazy talk. That doesn't ever happen.
So the two teams just bled the clock like crazy for 13 minutes, roughly, of the first quarter, and Bama punched it in for 7, and Ole Miss didn't. And then I thought that Ole Miss, Blake, really got out of what they wanted to do. Now, you could argue Bama took them out of it. We forget how well we love to talk about Corral throwing the ball down the field. They're unbelievable at running the football last year and this year.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
They were first in the league or second in the league last year, and they were entering the game. They were like first in the league this year.
And they couldn't get Ely or Parrish. And Corral didn't pull it and like ding Bama for an 18-yard gain. And they just didn't quite have the guys at wide receiver to do what they needed to do.
No, Ole Miss, 78 yards rushing on 34 carries. That's a 2.3 yard per clip average. That's not good. That's subpar. Also, the number that is incredible to me, two things stand out. One, the teams went for it on fourth down a combined 9 times. Ole Miss was 2 of 5. Alabama was 3 of 4. Some of those directly led to touchdowns.
Right.
Secondly, Alabama had the ball 38 minutes. Ole Miss had it 22.
And Saban talked about that after the game.
Yep.
That we're not going to do that. This will not be our offensive game plan week to week, but we decided to play more of Alabama in 2011 football and just pound it and keep Matt Corral and that offense on their sideline. And they did it, and it was super effective, and it was not a close game, and it was 28-0 at half.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah.
It was 7 points in the first. Like you said, the first quarter was so slow. It was just 7-0. So you still probably felt like if you're Ole Miss, you feel like, look, it's fine. We're down 7-0. We're fine. But then Alabama reels off 21 in the third quarter, or in the second quarter, I should say. And it was over.
Ball game.
28-0.
And now you get Ole Miss and Arkansas this weekend in the Tito's Vodka Bloody Mary game at 11 a.m.
Yeah, two teams
in Oxford.
Two teams licking their wounds.
It is. And but this is Ole Miss's first big home game since the pandemic.
How much of this is sucked out because A, it's an 11 a.m. and B, you just got absolutely whipped by Alabama?
I think it's more 11 a.m. There's still excitement, and they're still going to have a big crowd. It will not be what it was if you had played a close game against Alabama. But look, this is a huge game for Arkansas and Ole Miss. So that's in Oxford, 11 a.m. And I think Ole Miss started off as a 6-point favorite, and it moved pretty quick. And so we'll take a look at that too. The Out of Bounds Show, 105.9 The Zone, ESPN. We're streaming live on the Out of Bounds radio app. We're live in the BankPlus Studio. SEC Insider Hit this morning is brought to you by Farm Bureau Insurance. Bundle your auto and home and save with your local Farm Bureau Insurance agent. Here's what I thought was interesting about what Gene Chizik said about the air raid and Leach and what Elko did. And Mike Elko, for our listeners, is the defensive coordinator for the Aggies. What Elko did and didn't do. Chizik talked about how he had played Leach several times. And he obviously said, hey, everything hinges on execution. I thought this was interesting from Chizik, who was an excellent DC. You could argue the whole head coaching thing. He said there is a counter to everything a defensive coordinator does, no matter what you do. He says, don't underestimate what will happen when Mike Leach gets Crabtree / Wes Welker type receivers. Basically, Mississippi State's receivers right now are serviceable plus. Much better than they've had the last 100 years. But not like a Wes Welker, not like a Michael Crabtree, which they think they may have one or two that are young on the roster. Chizik went on to say, if you upgrade at the running back position, all right, then you're going to see this thing really gin and go. And I think you can see the trend of where they're going. And then Cole Kubelik said, I can't believe that Elko manned up on Mississippi State at times. And guess who made them pay? Will Rodgers made them pay. Will stayed in there, this is easy for me to say, stayed in the pocket and really, really hurt A&M with some great, great throws throughout the evening. And, hey, you got to throw it in tight windows, and you got to do that in the red zone. 105.9 The Zone, ESPN, live in the BankPlus Studio. So Auburn, big win. Kentucky with a big win. And obviously Mississippi State with a big win. There's got to be some tough questions being asked in College Station this morning. I mean, real tough questions. 4 years into this Jimbo Fisher thing, you're paying him $9 to $10 million a year. You're going to start off 0-3 in the conference. I mean, and Calzada is just a serviceable QB. And the fact that Mississippi State allowed him to run 25 yards into the end zone, I know that drove Arnett crazy because that game was about to go the other way on A&M.
It was.
LSU, I don't know what this is for Ogeron. Is it year 5? 4 or 5? Obviously, he's won a natty. I guess he took over as interim in 2017. You get beat by an Auburn team that is very ordinary, and you got to be frustrated because you were at home and you didn't, do the things that you needed to do in the second half in a close ball game. And then Florida with Dan Mullen goes to Kentucky, and Kentucky plays the game that they want to play. It's ugly, muck it up, low scoring. And the Kentucky Wildcats come away with a big win. So I think that you could say that the Gators, the Tigers, and the Aggies are feeling pretty bad this morning. Is it tough on Ole Miss and Arkansas fans? Yeah, but you're still in year 2. You're getting up. I know you were the toast of the town, and when you are the toast of the town, it is tough to not listen to too many people about how great you are.
Look at Ed Orgeron.
Right, right. But there's no doubt that Sam Pittman and Lane Kiffin have dominated the airwaves as far as what they've been able to put. Now, Pittman's actually beat some people. Pittman beat Texas and Texas A&M.
Yep.
The one thing about Ole Miss is they haven't beat anybody. I mean, they beat Louisville, Austin Peay, and Tulane. So, they have Arkansas. I call it Arkansas Mississippi State light. I don't think this Arkansas team is special by any stretch. They're well coached. They do some things well. They have no explosiveness on the offensive side of the football.
Nope.
Like a lot of times what Dan Mullen, other than a couple of years, would bring to the table. Dan would win 8 or 9 games, but he could not move the football against elite teams. They couldn't score.
Well, this is a massive opportunity for Arkansas and Ole Miss coming up then to prove whether or not they're legit.
Yeah. I mean,
if Ole Miss's offense is what we think it is outside of playing a Bama or a Georgia, then Arkansas getting a win at Ole Miss would be massive for Sam Pittman.
It would. Well, heck, when he beat them last year, it was. He beat Mississippi State and Ole Miss last year, and he only won 3 games. I think we forgot about that. As much as Leach took a beating, and Pittman was like, people were just, I can't believe how good he is last year. But it was all about when you won your games. And Leach won that first one. Then it was some disappointment. They both won 3 games last year.
It's what we perceive,
except
too.
Leach won his bowl game, and Arkansas didn't.
We also came into that season going, well, Arkansas is a rebuild and Mississippi State's not. I don't think anybody realized how much more a rebuild Mississippi State was going to be than what it looked like at the beginning, right? So that's the other thing,
if you
too.
beat LSU, or I guess if you just lose to LSU and beat Arkansas, it's just a different mindset from the fan base.
Yep.
But you beat 2 elite recruiters on the road now.
And this one with a full crowd.
Yeah.
This one with 105,000 people screaming and hollering.
Kyle Field, 105,000. That's a great point. You went on the road with a full capacity stadium with a monster W for Mississippi State. Now they take a week off. Then you get to host Bama. Isn't it fun in the SEC?
Yeehaw,
Clemson
baby.
played Boston College this past weekend. You're playing LSU, A&M, and Bama 3 straight. and Ole Miss is about to go on a heck of a run here. They'll play Arkansas, then they'll go to Tennessee, and then they play LSU at home and at Auburn. All winnable games, but you just don't know what you have.
And the wear factor. The wear and tear factor that we haven't seen yet from Ole Miss. Let me ask you this question. Give me most devastating loser of the weekend and most impressive winner of the weekend. Like, which win is the biggest? Which loss was the most devastating?
Well, the biggest win is Mississippi State going on the road.
Is it?
Yeah.
Kentucky's 5-0. Can they make a play in the East?
No.
Okay.
No, they're not.
So,
they're not.
So that
they're
win
not making a play on Georgia unless Kirby really wants to forget how to coach.
Okay.
That Georgia defense, man, is
decent.
That Georgia D is the truth. They are phenomenal. Of course, I still don't think that the cocktail, even coming off this weekend, I don't think the cocktail party is a given because I think it's different week, couple weeks from now. You don't ever know, what you're going to do. Go ahead. All right, so you asked me.
So you're saying State would be your most impressive win on the road?
Yeah.
Top 15 team?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Most devastating loss then?
Is it Florida?
They're now out of the East race?
Florida, LSU, A&M. So what most devastating loss between the Gators, Tigers, and Aggies?
To me, it's between two teams there.
To me, it's between the Aggies and Gators.
Yep.
But I don't know why I'm saying. I mean, that's a tough loss for LSU.
But it's still a top 10 to 15 recruiter, and you're in a weird place as a university where I think part of the fan base is almost like, let's just get this over with, pull the Band-Aid off. Orgeron, let's get him out of here, right?
All right, then I'll go Jimbo. I'll go Aggies because they're paying him $9 to $10 million a year in year 4.
Yep.
And
it was at home.
It was at home against a Mississippi State team that's the youngest team in the league.
Yep.
And was coming off back-to-back losses to Memphis and LSU. And I think people were asking the question, are they just going to pack it in?
Mm-hmm.
Is it going to be one of those miserable seasons where you think you've got a little bit more than they're showing, but they're not even going to win another game other than maybe Vandy and Tennessee State? Instead, they get a huge win. So I'd stay in the same game. But you could argue the Gators, too, because Florida is who they are, and A&M has never been Florida. And for them to go on the road and lose a game that they haven't lost in Lexington since '86 is a devastating blow for the Gators. And
it takes them out of the East race, which they were actually somewhat in, even with the loss to Alabama.
So you basically you have Bama and Georgia.
Yeah. I don't see how it's anything other than that.
Yeah,
at this
Bama
point.
and Georgia in the SEC championship game.
Georgia would have to lose.
Well, they'd have to lose this weekend, Blake,
to
Auburn. And that's at Auburn. So they're coming off this high. They got up for Arkansas. I don't know if JT Daniels is coming back or not. We'll have to look at that. They're playing a walk-on at quarterback by the name of Stetson Bennett IV. And they go to Auburn, who's coming off for a big win against LSU.
Huge win for Brian Harsin. Huge win.
You wouldn't think that Auburn could score against Georgia.
But can Georgia score against Auburn?
That's a great question.
Are they going to run for the 10 yards of carry they did against Arkansas?
And just like some of these other stadiums this past weekend, Auburn will be off the chain.
It'll be rowdy.
In Jordan-Hare. They're just woo. It's a good lineup this weekend. Arkansas and Ole Miss. Auburn at Georgia at Auburn.
Bama.
And
at
LSU
A&M.
could get beat. If LSU gets beat this week at Kentucky, you really have to ask, how much longer, I can't believe we're asking this question, how much longer does Ed Ogeron have? The Out of Bounds Show. It's brought to you by Farm Bureau Insurance. Bundle your auto and home and save with your local Farm Bureau Insurance agent. Also, hit up favorites.com to get a quote in 4 minutes or less. Tom Luganville, 8:30.